All right. Well, I didn't mean to cut that other part off, and I did. And I don't have my glasses on, so I couldn't see. So I'm gonna have to deal with the glare. So what we'll do now is that we'll continue on with the lecture of Native American cultures. I just don't have. I don't have the. How can you say it? Uh, I don't got my groove. I guess I should record these at night. That's when I do them, and it's a lot quieter and a lot cooler. And I think I do better at the end of the day than at the beginning of the day when I'm kind of sluggish. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish this, and and then we'll get moving. The next tribe are the Coahuiltecan and the Karankawas. And the Coahuiltecan are my favorite, okay, as are the Karankawas, all right? And they are two tribes united under one language. The Karankawa live along the coastal plains. Karankawa means dog lover or dog raiser. Now, they're almost identical to Takapan, but they had a different language, and that's what makes them a little different, okay? That's what for the most part makes them different than the Badai. If not, they were going to be like the Atacapan or the Bidas. Okay, uh, they were taller than the Atacapans, and they used longbows that are almost as tall as they were. They were heavily tattooed. They would tattoo themselves with yucca thorns that are very common along the Gulf Coast plains. Now, the Coahuiltecans lived south of San Antonio, as far as south of Saltillo, Mexico, and about 50 to 60 miles inland from the Gulf Coast. Okay, the Coahuiltecan had subtribes as to where the Karankawas did not have, like the Papayas, where the San Antonio area Coahuiltecans, the Orejones were southeast of San Antonio, and the Aranamas were the ones that were in the area of Laredo, Texas. And I feel that some of my ancestors are part Coahuiltecan. They lived in communal clans. They helped each other greatly. I don't think that the Karankawa and the Coahuiltecan helped each other. They were, even though they were like cousins, they didn't really interact with each other. They stayed within their own group. Um, I think they were great. Indians, the bands, these were not tribes, they were bands of anywhere between 5 to 15 members, 20 members in a group for the Coahuiltecan. The Karankawas were a little bigger, but for the most part, the Coahuiltecans were not, okay? In order to survive this huge this climate that was hot, it was arid with very little water. They had to remain in small groups. Okay, they were led by one headman. All right, they were very generous with each other, and he would put his tribe ahead of himself. At times, there was always equal distribution of food. There was equal You know, if he would shoot something, he would make sure that everybody else got what they needed first before he would feed himself. In addition to that, they ate just about everything. They ate grubs. They ate mesquite beans. Mesquite beans are good, by the way. They ate agave bulbs. They would pull up the agaves and eat the actual agave bulbs. Um, you would have some fermentation in their stomach, which would give them something of a euphoric drunkenness. In addition to that, they would eat beans, some sort of beans that they would find. They would also pound the agave bulbs into a flour, and they would make tortas out of it. In times of famine, they would eat dirt, ants, rotting wood to give it bulk, to make their stomachs feel full. They ate prickly pear cactus tunas. They also ate nopales, tender nopales. They hunted jabalina, deer, frogs, fish, and then occasionally they would get a bison and or a bear, which was always a treat for them. They also believed in the second harvest. That means that they would go back and find old poop that they had, excrement, and they would pound it into a flour and eat it in a gruel. In addition to that, this is not uncommon. There are other cultures that do this. They were all of the ones in one band were related. These are the characteristics of the Coahuiltecan. The Karankawa were very, very much like the Atacapan, almost identical. They just didn't speak the same language. That's why they're different. Um, They all functioned as equals in the Coahuiltecans. Okay, everybody was equal. Nobody was better than anybody else. And they were allowed to remain in the band as long as you were kind to each other. You weren't allowed to be a butthead. You were not allowed to be ugly to each other. If you were, then you would be cast out of the band. Okay, they were wiped out by the Spanish in warfare and disease by 1850. I mean, this is horrible. There were not a lot of them, so even though there was not a lot of them, it didn't take a long time for because there was not a lot of them, it didn't take a long time to wipe them out. Okay, a lot of them intermarried into the mestizo population and the mulatto population, and that's how they were able to survive. Okay, now, in my opinion, they're the most tenacious of all of the Indian tribes and the most, I would say, the most prolific, even though they were wiped out so early on in. Now, the next tribe that we're going to talk about is the Humanos, and they didn't call themselves the Humanos. The Spanish give them the name of the Humanos because they were the ones that resemble humans the most. Okay, humanos. Okay, they lived along New Mexico, Mexico, the West Texas plains, along the Rio Grande. So imagine, well, from where the Rio Grande begins all the way down as far as maybe Del Rio. Okay, but not all the way to Laredo. Okay. Now they adapt pretty good. They lived in adobe houses. That means that they had permanent settlements. They produced bounties of corn, squash, pumpkins, beans, a variety of beans. They hybridized beans. They tattooed their faces. The women wore long hair, and the men wore long hair, but they would put it up in a bun like Princess Leia, okay? And they would also put feathers in the bun so they could say, well, this is my standing within the culture, okay? They had fashion clothes made out of furs, but when they get the sheep from the Spaniards, they get really good at spinning wool, and they would spin the wool and they would make clothes for themselves. So that was pretty cool, and they made really colorful stuff. They had a vast trade network before the Spaniards and after the Spaniards. They traded turquoise, beans, corn, squash, meat, pottery. After the Spanish, they traded melons, blankets, sheep, horses, you name it. Now, what kills them, unfortunately, is attacks by the Lipan Apache that lived all in that area, and the Spaniards and disease. Okay, they too, like the Coahuiltecan, as their populations begin to diminish in the 1600s and 1700s, they start to go into Mexico and start marrying into the mulatto and mestizo groups, and they cease to become a group by 1800. But they do kind of blend into the Mexican population. We don't know exactly where they are or what they are or what became of them, but they did meld into the Mexican population. The next tribe that we're going to talk about is the Plains Indians. And there was no Plains Indians. This is a misconception. The Plains Indians didn't become Plains Indians until after the introduction of the horse. They may have lived in the plains, but they were not the tribe that they were once they got a hold of the horse. The Plains Indians are going to be the Comanche, the Kiowa, the Apache, and the Tonkawa. Okay, but primarily the Comanche, Kiowa, and the Tonkawa. The Apache still kind of stay where they were, which is West Texas and New Mexico. They lived in the area of New Mexico, southern Colorado, and then with the introduction of the horse, they move into south central Texas, and that's where they start really raising hells. Prior to that, prior to the horse, they were actually a small docile tribe. They, used dogs to move around, and pretty much that's it. They were really big into ceremonial rituals in quest for adulthood. They had something resembling quinceañeras for women, and the Kiowa had the Rabbit Society, which was for boys and young men who would later become dog soldiers and then later become warriors. All of the above, with the exception of the Kiowa, believed in one powerful God. Okay, they prayed to the sun, the moon, the stars, and the seasons. Now, the Kiowa believed that they had come from a hollow tree, that a tree had given birth to them, and they practiced the sun dance. Now, the sun dance was brutal. Okay, they would use these claws, eagle claws, that they would put on their skin, and then they would tie them with a rope up into the center of a big hut, and they would put pressure on it and lean back until it would rip off, and then the scars were a sign that you were a very worthy warrior. Okay, the chief, or Kochienko, was elected by the top 10 warriors of the tribe, and the top 10 warriors were kind of elected by the other warriors. Okay, they didn't do a lot of agriculture almost at all. They did a lot of raiding. They went into Mexico uh, when the moon was full. Uh, they would take white women into their culture and procreate with them. Uh, Unlike the rest of the tribes, they did survive into modernity, primarily because of their nomadic and warlike nature and unwillingness to assimilate. So you still have Kiowa, Comanche, Apache, and Tonkawas. Okay, plenty of Apaches in New Mexico. Okay, and the deal here is that they were incredibly they were mean. And we also didn't talk about the Kickapoo. The Kickapoo are kind of like on their own over there in left field. The Kickapoo were so mean that Mexico didn't want them and Texas didn't want them, so they just lived underneath the bridge in Del Rio until they kind of figure it out on their own on what they want to do. But it is fairly harsh or fairly easy to say that the I'm sorry, close my eyes. Remember when I think um, that the Kickapoo were I would say the meanest of all Texas Indians. Okay, now, this is going to conclude our section with Native Americans. I'm sorry that it's such a poor lecture. I mean, I'm all over the place this morning. I'm not having a good day. I got plenty of sleep, but I don't know what it is. I'm just struggling. So I do apologize. I will come back and I will record chapter 2, which is going to be, or section 2, invasion, Spanish invasion of Texas. That will be next, and I'll probably record that tonight when I'm not falling asleep. Maybe I'll take a nap or something. Let me know if I need to do anything, and let's keep in touch. Take care and wear your masks.